Well, I own a business and I have this grand thing that I'll be a serial entrepreneur. Well, serial means more than one. So like the only logical thing in this sense is you've got to open another business, or like it just doesn't make sense if you don't open another business. I look at everything good, bad, or indifferent in my life as been an opportunity to learn. And I value that more than the outcome. Because the outcome is literally a blip of dopamine in the moment.
Yeah.
You're listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast, where we showcase and share authentic stories of Northeast Indiana. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure to do that so that you can stay up to date on our latest episodes. Or you can also follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And if you ever have a suggestion for a guest you want to see on the show, make sure to comment that down below. Or if you have any questions that you want us to ask our guests, comment that as well. We want these conversations to be impactful and engaging, so we would love your input. Now to today's episode. Jonathan and Brice sit down with 2023 Pioneer finalist Paris McFarthing. For those of you who don't know, last year in 2023, we started a Pioneer Awards event. At this event, we celebrate the people and the stories that are elevating this region. Paris is the owner and president of Phil's Hobby Shop and Hop River Brewing. Something that stood out to us when we first met him last year to film his Pioneer video was his intentional leadership style, which is why we wanted to invite him on the podcast to dive deeper into that topic. Paris also opens up about the impact that grief has had on his journey when he lost both of his parents within a few years. His self-reflection on his own journey and experiences and leadership style is truly inspirational, and I think it's something that we can all learn from. At least that's how I felt while watching and editing this podcast. Speaking of editing, I've talked a lot, so let's cut to the interview.
Hello and welcome to another NEI Pioneer Podcast. Today, I am completely thrilled that we got Paris McFarthing on the show. Welcome, Paris. Paris, for those of you who may remember, he was one of the finalists for the Pioneer of the Year Award last year. He's also president and co-founder of Hop River Brewing Company, which makes me very happy because he brought in gifts for all of us today. So that's appreciated. So welcome, Paris.
Thank you.
And I would also like to say my partner today is the copywriter on our team, and it's Brice Vance.
Thanks for allowing me to hop on this one.
Of course. So we all kind of take turns hosting from time to time.
Perfect.
We were all collectively so thrilled with having you there last year, and you have so many nuggets of gold that I want to prove that I took notes on you.
John, you're gonna make me feel like I just need to come here every day. And it's like,
Hey,
if my 5-year-old yells at me, it's like, "Where's John at today?" I could really use him.
Bring him beer, and he'll pump you up.
Yeah.
I think you've done so many great things, and that's with all sincerity. It's so impressive, and I have to tell you this before we really get into it.
Sure.
Stefan Frigia is our CEO who you've met.
Uh-huh.
And I think he cornered you at the event last year because...
Possibly.
Yes. Because when he got out of there, he pulled me aside. We all went out to, I can't remember the name of the bar or restaurant. They have like an open mic night there or whatever. We all went over there and he would not stop talking about you. And he asked if he could interview you on the podcast, on the show. And I said, of course you can. And then I snuck you in so I could interview you myself.
Did your best Heisman?
I did my best. Yeah, it was a Sackett pivot. But we were talking about leadership, and there's so many things to cover here. So let's get into it. If one of my favorite quotes from you was when you said, "When heavy things happen, I take on heavier things to cope with it." Do you remember saying that?
I do.
Yeah, and it was about, because we were talking, we didn't get it as in-depth as we will today.
Sure.
But we were talking about, unfortunately, you had lost, I believe you lost your father, and then you lost your mother 2 months later. And out of that spawned this little empire that you've come up with. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more philosophically, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of that I've been thinking about and kind of unpacking that more. It's interesting because I'm a millennial. I was born in '84, and we've just now come to this point where we talk about kind of our past and how it's written who we are. Whether you use the word trauma or whatever. I'm not a massive. I don't identify it as trauma, but I do identify that there are things that have shaped who I am. That being a big piece of it. I was in my 20s when my parents passed, and you're in your 20s, you kind of have this cataclysmic event, really, and you don't realize the impact till you get to your 30s, and you're trying to be like a full functioning human, and then you realize like there's a lot I don't know, and there are some people that probably could have helped me, but so you start to put all that together, and I think about like, if I'm honest, there was probably a traumatic event because I got a phone call on a Sunday when I was sitting on the couch with my wife that they're taking your dad to the hospital. You need to get here. That's all I got. So like I get to the hospital, and by that point he had already passed, and it was just kind of like, in those moments you don't process all that. Like
No.
you just kind of react. And then that same year, that was in March, and in November, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Had surgery. Parkview did a great job, did all they could. She had surgery there for that. But then by December of the next year, she was back in, and the doctor told her it was terminal. And it was one of those moments that, those two things. One, my mom telling me I need to go to the appointment where it was my mom, her mom, my grandma, my cousin. And the doctor said, hey, you have 2 months. And then...
this was 2 months after...
This was a year. So
okay.
It was like the next... My dad was 13. My mom passed in 15, but it was early 15.
Okay.
So by that point, it was, I think, December of 2014 that we were at the doctor again. Basically, it was months, ended up being weeks. So those last couple weeks, we effectively, like my wife and my young daughter at the time, we basically moved in with my mom. But it was just very interesting because in that moment, two things. Like when my dad passed, I don't know that I knew how to grieve. And the way I grieved was he had bought kind of a family lake cottage that for years we kind of stop and start and working on it. Spent a lot of time up there. It's actually Fox Lake up in Angola, just a small, private, historically black lake. But we had property up there, and I was up there as a kid, kind of always working on it. Life happens, and it never got done. But we had really started maybe a year or two before he passed. We put in a new well, had made plans to really start working on this cottage. So when he passed, I didn't know where to like put all whatever I had, and it just ended up being that next thing I know, I'm pouring myself into renovating this cottage. And that was, I'd work 8 hours a day and then drive up to Angola and work another 8 hours, sleep a few hours, come home and do it again. And I didn't understand that until later. And really what I understand of that now is he wanted that to be an anchor or just a place for my family to go. And what it became for me is that I didn't get to go there with him, so I'm going to build this so I can go there with my daughters. And that's become kind of really a big catalyst point of our family, just somewhere we go. I mean, it is a family place, so there's that piece.
But did you think that he was, what do I know? Do you think that he was taking this as a father-son project or not even?
I think he knew what he wanted it to be. He wanted it to be that kind of family gathering place. And we had talked about that. We had started working on it. We were doing it as a shared project, and we didn't get to complete it together. And again, maybe subconsciously, all of a sudden it just became that outlet. And
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how couldn't it, right?
Yeah, very much so. So that was a heavy thing one, just renovating a house to grieve. Maybe we coined that.
Is that something you searched to find, a place to grieve? Or was that?
No, it just happened.
Yeah.
It just was a natural byproduct. Mm-hmm. And it just became easy because it was something to focus on.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. The old medicine man telling you to go in the back and dig a hole and put a garlic clove in it.
Yeah.
You're getting your mind occupied is basically the premise.
Yeah, and then it wasn't until later that I started to understand the connections, but it really did kind of become the thing. And then so we fast forward, kind of my mom got sick not too long after, kind of diagnosed as terminal later. I remember kind of that December Christmas, like, obviously, like, you get that news. I think it was maybe a week before Christmas. So a little morbid.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do with that. But I don't know what it was about that period of time. So my mom was a very stoic person. Like, I didn't know how much she had went through because, I guess maybe I get it honestly. I get it from my mama. But she carried that load so much on her own that, like, I never really understood what she was doing and how much it was affecting her. But I do remember distinctly, like, as we're going through this and she's planning for after she passes, like, I couldn't help but in my head, like, wow. Like, I'd never seen someone face death so gracefully. And I think that just stuck with me. And inherently, I think that changed a lot of who I am and how I approach a lot of things. I remember there was a comment that she made when the time was near and she knew it. First thing is she was just working hard to make sure that my brother and I were okay. Things were settled, that there wasn't going to be any animosity. And I remember being there, like, you're sitting there with a parent dividing their assets.
Yeah.
And, it's a kind of a surreal moment. And then once kind of it was understood what was going to happen, it wasn't too long after she actually had a stroke. And just knowing that, like, that was that point that she found peace and she didn't need to hang on because she knew that we'd be okay.
Well, because what happened then, so your father passes. Mm-hmm. He had a father-son team project, the house. So then fast forward, your mom passes. You've already got Phil's Hobby Shop. You already own that.
Right.
At the time. And now you're part owner or you don't yet own the brewery?
I don't own the brewery. So that came after my mom passed. And that was a whole weird conversation in my head. So my mom passes. And at that point, I was 31. I was 29 when my dad passed. 31 when my mom passed. Or going to be 31 that year. And they were both 62. So my background's in finance. I am pretty good at numbers and spreadsheets. So, like, I said, this is a really good time for a midlife crisis. Yeah. So that's
pick your crisis.
Yeah, that's effectively kind of what I told myself. I was like, okay, well, you should probably figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. If it's, by the numbers halfway over, you should figure out something. And then
get half of it. Why not?
Yeah, and then I used to start doing crazy things. Like, I was like, okay, well, I own a business and I have this grand thing that I'll be a serial entrepreneur. Well, serial means more than one. So, like, the only logical thing in this sense is you've got to open another business, or, like, it just doesn't make sense if you don't open another business. You can't be a serial entrepreneur.
And you have to convince the wife, I would assume.
Yeah, well, we are talking more about that now. I don't know that I convinced her. She just realized that, like, I was so focused on it. I think it's been almost 10 years, over 10 years since my dad passed, and almost 10 since my mom passed. And as we kind of unpack it now and talk more about it and talk more openly, like, she was more like, I loved you and I saw what you were going through. So, like, she just kind of left it be. I don't know that she thought everything was a bad idea, but there were a lot of good things that came out of it. But it was just kind of one of those, like, just head down, like, no, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah. Because, and listen, I'm not going to sit here and keep blowing smoke up you, but I got to tell you, you're a legend around here. You are. Everybody knows you. Your name, I'm not from here. So, we became fast friends because everybody was mentioning your name and I had to get to know you. But as you were going through all this, one of the things, and again, I've got a million quotes from you on here, but you said specifically your parents went through life and didn't get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then we started talking and riffing a little bit about that, about your kids and what you want your legacy to be, because you didn't have anybody out front of you really showing you this roadmap. Did you? It seems like you kind of made it up as you went along.
No, to some extent. And like, I have to, there's more yes than no to that. And I have to like, and it's one of those things as you get older and you can slow down and appreciate and look more. Like, it's almost like when you're a kid, you're looking down at the ground. And the next thing you know, you're looking out like a few steps in front of you. And now you're looking at the end of the block. And when you become an adult, you're scanning the neighborhood. And the truth is like, I didn't realize what was in front of me until I got older. Like, yes, my parents, but then like my grandmother. Like, my mom was an only child, and when she passed, there was a connection between her and my mom, and I've kind of filled more of that. And we spent summers with her. I was always close, but now just really like she's 91, so I'm down there more frequently and getting to talk to her, and I really appreciate that because one, like the drive that she has, like I'm nothing compared to her. Like she still gives me a hard time because I'm not on her level of like keeping up with things and being on point. So
she
like
should go bowling with my parents.
Yeah, no. And she's smart, she's savvy. And I firmly believe this. If like she had the opportunity that I had, like we'd have generational wealth. That like it's just nuts. And even with what she's been able to do, and it's not just about money, but just how she approaches things and people, and just I am thoroughly in awe of her. And the truth, and people who know me know this, and like I'm here because of her, because she had the foresight to invest in me that allowed me to buy a business and things like that. And just still to this day,
she actually funded you?
She did.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I was going to buy Phil's, we were working with a bank, but before that point, she gave me money to allow me to buy. There was another store that was for sale. We bought the inventory. We turned that into capital and a bank loan to buy the store properly.
Wow.
My original business partner and I. And she loaned me the money to do that. Well, a year or two later, I go back to pay her for that, to pay her back. And she's like, no, just keep it as a wedding present. So it was just one of those things that like...
She's invited to my wedding.
Right. But you don't see the power of that until like later. Like I was in my 20s.
I think there's an old saying that youth is sometimes wasted on the youth.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you see past that? I mean, at the time, you're thinking, what a gracious gift.
Right.
But you're not realizing that it's setting a roadmap for the rest of your life, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of on that vein, because meeting you and, a successful businessman in our 11 county region, and meeting you had such an impact on me while we were recording you. And it's so funny that, time goes by. My intern at the time is now a full-time team member who you just met, Callie. And she's actually behind one of the cameras right now. But, you talked, the one thing, if I could pick out one quote from you that really meant a lot to me, you and I were talking a lot about leadership, which is where I want most of the conversation to go, just because, dude, you are on fire with your way of thinking. And my favorite thing that you said, and I will quote this, you said, I was setting out to build a bigger road so more people can pass. And I thought that's leadership. I've never heard anybody phrase it that way. I've never heard anybody that is successful think about it that way. There's a lot of inherent me in success. No, this is about me and I got to get my way. I didn't hear those selfish thoughts or words come out of you at all. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I still wholeheartedly believe in that. And I will say this, like, this is my disclaimer. A lot of those thoughts come from situations where I have just fallen on my face, and you learn a lot. Like, you don't have those moments if you don't fall. And I'm still learning as a leader, learning to communicate and be better, because I think the trouble, and this is something I have to get better at too, is like inherently, like, we tend to try to lead how we want to be led. And so just find, like, it takes a lot of effort to work with people and figure out who they are and what they need. So that, like, I'm still getting better at that because, like, my life is very different than other people's lives. And just being and leaving space for that to happen, whether that's the way I think or the way I operate.
Do you think that took training, or was that an innate?
That just took, like, running into the brick wall of failure.
Really?
Was there anything from your parents or your grandmother that, any values or any skills or lessons they, instilled in you to help
I really
that
just
process?
think, like, how they cared about people.
Yep.
Like, my parents and my grandma were very involved with the church, and that just churches and religions in their own way, just there's a natural community building tendency there, which there should be. And then my mom was heavy in volunteerism. She was with the Fort Wayne Women's Bureau, the Alzheimer's Association, did things at the state level with the governor, with aging and just all kinds of stuff. So, like, I grew up around that, like them being in their community and helping and serving other people. And even with that, like, it's hard because, I don't know, and I'm going to say this and it sounds cliche, but, like, I like to serve in silence. If I'm going to do something, like, I'm fine if you don't recognize it. You may not recognize what I'm trying to do until later, and you may not, like, I don't know. Like, I don't need the recognition. That's not why I do it. Like, so much so, my wife gets this. Not everyone gets this about me, but, like, I'm kind of counterculture. Like, if it's your birthday, like, I may not give you something on your birthday, but there's going to be a time where you need something most, and I'm going to do it then when it matters. Because I don't want to be the one that's, when everybody's looking, doing it. I'd rather do it when it means the most for you. And that's just anything. It's like, I've always been anti, like, hey, you're supposed to do this. Like, no, well, I'll do it when it matters. And right now it doesn't matter because you're supposed to do it.
Right.
It just...
See, that's it. You've got a whole bunch of, the way you talk about these things is so unique.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're talking about hitting a brick wall or failing or falling or whatever. Can you think of those times when you really bit it and you didn't know how you were going to recover or how you reacted? Or you were...
Yeah, I think of a lot of times.
See, I was just giving you these big compliments. Now I'm telling you you failed.
I would like to say, like, if I can talk about right now, like, I'm very much in this phase right now of my life. I'm getting a little bit older, but I'm in this phase where I recognize before this, up until this point, I can make so much happen with just, like, willpower and hard work and just really plowing through.
Yep.
And that takes just so much energy and effort. So I've reached this point now where I realize, like, you're running a marathon for whatever, call it 10 years, and then you slow down to, like, grab a drink and you realize it's like, yeah, well, great, I'm out here, but this is, I don't know, I can't do this for another 10 years and be where I want to be. But what I'm recognizing is it is more important to really, really bring other people along and train other people and work through them. Because you know how the old adage goes, I wish I could have more of me. And it's like, no, you need to let go of more things so you don't need that much of you.
You kind of mentioned, this taking a marathon, know, and you mentioned in the, in your Pioneer video from last year that you're a tinkerer. You know, how hands-on would you say you are, when it comes to leadership? Or do you believe in, you're hands-on for a certain amount of time and then you kind of, rein it back and let, the person that you're, trying to lead kind of let them find their own path?
I think there's always going to ebb and flow. And I think I am a very project-driven person. Yeah. So it's kind of like, for me, it's full go, slide back, and just let it happen. It's like, oh, I need to jump in again. So it's just almost kind of like when the top stops spinning, then I need to spin it again to get it back in motion. And again, like, leadership is dynamic. People change. Generations come along. So I am by no means an expert at that. I'm probably failing today. I probably failed yesterday. I got some things right, So anyone listening that's ever worked for me, like, or worked with me, not perfect, but...
Hi, everyone. We want to take a quick moment to shout out our podcast sponsors. Now, first, you might be wondering who I am, so let me introduce myself. I am Hannah Hannigan, and normally I'm behind the camera as the videographer, but today I wanted to be in front of the camera to shout out the people who made this podcast possible. Barrett McNagny and Sweetwater Sound are the two sponsors of our podcast, and they're both located in Northeast Indiana. If you don't already know who they are, let me introduce them to you. We're going to start with Barrett McNagny. As Fort Wayne has grown, the Barrett Law Firm has grown with it. Founded in 1876, Barrett McNagny is one of the oldest law partnerships in Indiana, and it's among one of the largest just in Northeast Indiana. They have the breadth of experience across a wide range of practice areas to provide you trusted legal counsel where and when you need it. And Sweetwater is actually the one we were able to purchase most of our audio and video gear from to make this podcast. So if you like how this podcast sounds or how it looks, be sure to check them out. Sweetwater, the nation's largest, and I would also add friendliest destination for music gear, is also your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. From audio interfaces, recording software, mixers, microphones, cameras, and lighting, Sweetwater has everything to get your podcast up and running. Enjoy personalized gear advice from their dedicated team of sales engineers, as well as free technical support to get your podcast connected and up and running. Really, what's not to love about that? So whether you already have a following or you're still chasing the next big thing, Sweetwater is going to be the ones to help you create a podcast that everyone will be talking about. So if you're interested in either of these companies, be sure to check out the links in our description. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
I'm almost done with your quote, so you'll be happy to know that. The other thing you said, and it kind of relates to what Brice just asked you, you said the most powerful leaders are the ones who give all of their power away. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this happens, and it's a natural tendency, especially for high achievers. I am a moderate achiever, but you tend to think that you're the only one. And what can happen there is if I told you, "Hey, I'm the only one can do this," do you ever think you're going to do it? Like it's just real simple math. If I'm the
counterproductive.
Yeah, if I'm the only one that can do it, or the only one that does it, you know what's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to be the only one that does it or that can do it. So it is, if you apply that in a broader concept, is if you create tools and processes and train and give that power away, eventually, like, they can do it. They might, they'll check in, but ultimately, then you kind of work yourself out of a job.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's real value. Because you think about it, like, yes, imagine a machine, right? So imagine if there's this machine that prints money. And I know we all want that. I'm looking for that. I haven't found it yet. But there's a machine out there. It's probably at the mint. But it just prints money, right? Business, whatever it does. It's running. But the fatal flaw of that machine is if I pull one pin or I take out this tiny little 3mm screw, everything breaks down. Is that machine truly valuable? Or is it really just a liability waiting to happen? Because the thing is, your business is a machine. So if there is a piece you pull out and it falls apart, what do you actually have? Mm-hmm. You really just have a liability. So if I am that small screw, right? Because the truth is like in any of my businesses, I am but a small part. But if I'm removed and it falls apart, I haven't built anything of value. So I either have to be in it forever, I have to sink with the ship. There's nowhere to go.
It's hard to, it's hard to build the right ecosystem around yourself. Mm-hmm. It's one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. Because my background, which is advertising and the big agencies. Well, okay, you're trying to get these multiple disciplines working together like pistons in one engine, and it's the hardest thing to do. And 100%. I know when I first got here, it was, I'm trying to change everything. Because here's the new brand, here's the new idea, here's the Pioneer platform, here's all this stuff. And I got to tell you, the one lesson learned out of all that was learning how to socialize an idea versus selling it.
Right.
Because I was probably too egotistical and too impassioned that I came in and said, "It's okay, everybody, I got this, I got it right."
Right.
Okay, well. But then you've got a bunch of people here who have been working on the brand for a year before they ever even heard my name. And that's a tough thing to do. I think it's really tough to pivot and know that, give people that empowerment that they know that they're part of something bigger, but yet even if it's my idea, it can still be improved upon.
100%. And like, I think about that, like an analogy that was kind of coming in my head, you said that, because I'm full of analogies, is sloppy gears that turn are still gears that turn.
A broken clock tells the right time twice a day.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it comes to that point, it's like, it may not be as tight as you want it to be, but it doesn't mean that it's not working.
But then how do you tell if you're settling for mediocrity versus striving for perfection?
And I think it's, and that just takes time. Like, I am not a perfectionist. I like things to be better, but I don't know that I've ever had them perfect. But you know, you hear this all: don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Right.
So it's more. I think if we in business and life work from a point of let's make continuous improvement, rather than try to identify what perfection is. Because the other truth about that is, if you identify perfection, then there's no room for really evolution. Because if perfect is this point here on the map, and you get there, or you're only going for there, like how much do you miss?
Well, see, the challenge that I've always had is, and I like it that you said that, because mine has been revolution versus evolution. And, you know,
I like evolution.
Yeah. And for me, it's been hammer and sickle.
Yeah.
And the reason why we were able to accomplish so much for the new brand and for NEI was through will. And it was willpower. And part of me is very proud of that. And part of me is kind of like, you know, I could have made it easier on myself. That's one of the struggles that I've had is, okay, everybody, this is the way we're doing it now, so deal.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I guess going back to kind of what I said, where I'm at now is like, I have gotten here from a willpower state. And it's like, it takes a lot of energy to do that. And then also, like, you lose a lot of people along the way.
Yeah, you break eggs to make that omelet, and there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
And that's not you know, a good person is never after that. But sometimes in retrospect or hindsight, you look back and you go, oh, man, you know. You don't want to burn those bridges. You don't want people to feel defeated. You want them to feel empowered, but you're still trying to bring them along with your vision. Because one of the things that we've talked about here was constituents and partners. And I've had constituents and partners come to me and said, well, you kind of said Pioneer starts here and get on board or get out. I mean, and that's not what I did. But it could be taken that way if you don't feel part of that process and brought along.
Absolutely. And I think, like, even with language, and I find myself, when talking to other people, it's like, one, like, we talk about related, but I'm going to pivot, but like advice. Advice is one of those things that everyone wants advice. But the truth is like, no, like, people can share their own experience, but you have to be careful with advice because, like, I don't know the full context, and you haven't provided the full context.
Yeah, I agree.
So because of that, and just building kind of constituency, I'm in a business group, and I learned some good things there about, like, normalizing how you share, and, like, I don't should on people. I can't tell you what you should do. I can speak from my own experience,
right?
What I might consider, and the reason I say that is because you have to leave room knowing that you don't have the full context.
Right.
There could be a subtle nuance that has a lot of impact in what needs to be done. Just that. And then also when you're sharing things or you're trying to give ideas, like how you approach that. And some of that is like, I wonder statements. Like, I wonder can go a long way than you should, or, hey, this is what it just allows things to be not that way, but it also allows you to kind of share a thought, you know, just with some windows and doors open to what could be different.
Have you, I mean, I would assume you probably have, you know, maybe you would say that and you might have a bad experience with getting maybe the wrong advice or advice. Have you gotten bad advice, or, you know, what makes you think, you know, that type of?
It's not even a bad advice thing. It's just there are people in my life that like I've met through groups and just kind of interact with that are super successful and very smart. And I can provide more insight from my own experience than I can tell them what they should do. And I mean, you're talking people that have millions of dollars or more revenue in their business. So like, I don't know their business.
Right.
Like I can only like the most valuable thing that any of us can provide is from our own experience, because you know why? No one else has it. No one has our experience, our context. So really, if we're honest, that's the only truth you know. You can only truly speak from that. So trying to say like, hey, I looked at your financials or I looked at this in your business and you should do this. Well, you're lying.
Right.
It's not true. You can say, I've experienced something similar, or I would approach it this way, but I can't say that that's going to work for you. You have to take that and make that determination.
Yeah, it's almost like it's interesting that you say it that way, because we all know that person or that guy or whatever that always says, you know what I would have done? I would have told them to, blah, 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 right? And you know that person never would have said that in the room.
Right. Well, and this, I think that's like, as a leader, you understand like there's nuance to everything. We think about like, it's hard because sometimes you have to spend more time listening than speaking, because I feel
like you're telling that directly to me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's like, you know how much people will tell you when you don't say anything?
I get told that quite a bit.
I tell Brice that every day, actually.
I may be...
If
you look at me like right now and I'm talking, you might think I'm a talkative person, but, when we're outside of this studio, I'm a little bit more reserved. Maybe not a little bit.
He's just like me. He's very reserved.
Yeah, but I mean, even when you leave space for other people to just talk or be, it's like I find that fascinating, because you can just pick up so much more of how something really is or how to move in a situation. Like if you want to know what to do, just say nothing, and then eventually you'll figure out like what's really happening or what the real concern is, or how you really need to approach something.
So you're a leader. Sometimes leaders are unwilling leaders. Sometimes they're thrust forward leaders and everybody else is in the wake. It's building that ecosystem around your skills and talents is tough. Can you talk about that, or if it's backfired on you?
Yeah, I think it can be tough, but you have to ask yourself is like, the truth is like, even though I want to do everything, I can't do everything. Like just like anyone that's human, I can drop a lot of balls with the best of them. And I think it's more recognizing on the flip side of that too, is just kind of like, where is your real talent? Just because you can do it all and fill a hole, and like, I would better describe that. I can do a lot of things and fill in for a short time, but then after a while, like my attention span from my desire to do that is fleeting.
Sure.
So it's more just recognizing like what fills your cup. What are you actually really good at, and what do you need to find other talented people to do?
What are the skills that you are looking for? I mean, because
Yeah.
you're trying to bring people along with you, and like you said, eventually, potentially pass you. What skills are you looking for, and then trying to help, or some that you see that you're trying to develop,
And even the intangibles.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just personally, and like, if we use like Emily, for example, not to call her out, but she's very much like...
I'm going to make sure she watches this.
And very much like my wife. Like I am, and everybody knows this, I'm a shiny object person, and I can move big rocks. But when it comes down to like sweeping a path from tiny pebbles, it's like, well, I'm fine walking on these. So
okay, I'm stealing that one from you. That's sweeping a path of tiny pebbles. Got it.
But it's true, because the tiny pebbles being those details, those those final details. Like 50,000 feet to like couple hundred feet above the ground. But when it really means to like coming above and like executing, it's like, I got another project I'm going to work on and get us started on. So when you're done, we'll meet up. And so I think you need those people that fill that gap. And I am more conscious of that now. Because when you're young, you're just like, well, I can do it all. And then you don't realize kind of what's left in your wake.
Right.
And then you get older and you realize like, you can't just do that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you say that. I always looked at it, in a video game when your character's getting tired, you can't. It's hard to see that in real life,
Right.
When you're going through this stuff, I was talking about it with the gang about last year. I didn't take one day off, not one.
But what good did that do for them? So what good does a tired John do for your team?
Exactly.
And that's what I'm having to accept. Like, what good do I do when I'm tired?
Right.
When my cup is half full or
But
empty?
it's hard to recognize that. It's hard to recognize it because you get focused, you get hyper focused sometimes. Right. I should say it this way. One can get hyper focused at the view of the horizon and knowing that that's where you're going. The hard thing to do is and we're going through it as a team right now because it was me and Ashton for so long that, hey, that's not your job anymore.
Well, and it's hard to fill other people's cup when yours is empty.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
When did you? Because I want to go back to, you said you were a tinkerer, and in some ways you might still be that. When did you have that shift or that turning point to where you are that person that is looking up from 50,000 or just down to 100 feet?
The pivot really happened kind of during that COVID period and having to kind of reassess how things were operating.
Well, because if I remember correctly, you said you were at 50% of sales during COVID, and you knew you had to do something about it. I think.
Yeah, with the brewery, I mean, the sales declined very rapidly. Like a lot of people, we were closed for a month. I spent a lot of that time at my store, and we were super busy. And my manager from my other store on North Clinton at the time came and worked with me. And we joked about it, and really all we did at the Park West store was just answer the phone. By answering the phone, like, we found out what our business needed to be, and that started with scheduling pickups, curbside delivery, and all of that. So we kept this business going, he and I, just by bootstrapping in a sense. And then things opened back up, and I made the decision to close the Clinton Street store, and then I moved him to our only store now, the Park West store. And it was in those moments by doing that I didn't have to be the store manager, and it freed me up to start focusing on the bigger thing. Some of it, a little bit, honestly, was self-preservation. Well, if I don't want to go back to that seat, I need to make sure that I'm providing them the resources to be successful. So in turn, I'm successful and can keep doing this and enjoying life how I want to enjoy it and making it possible for them to enjoy life. So it's not just I win, they don't. Like, how do we win together? And then just kind of taking that same mentality back to the brewery. Like, what do we need to do to get this so I can use my strongest skills to move us forward?
In retrospect, you look back, you know where you've gotten to in your life. You've been successful. People here know it. What advice would you give your younger self or anybody coming up behind you?
I think a lot about connections and how you know how you get a thought, next thing you know, you're thinking about like cheesecake. But then you started with thinking about
crackers,
whatever it may be. But just kind of that
taking a stab at
that random connection. And I've always been one to kind of backtrack and understand those connections. Like, how did I get here? What pivoted my thought to get to this landing place? And one thing that I realize in that is, you know, this got me to good places, but you have to be careful trying to say what you would have done. Because there's no guarantee, or should have done, because there's no guarantee you would end in the same place. There isn't. So I am cognizant of the journey and what I've learned along the way. Like, would it feel good? Would it feel good if I did something different, hoping for this result I think it should have been? But there's no guarantee that you're actually going to get that result. So I'm careful not to try and mentally rewrite or regret history. I mean, I'll be honest, like, I failed out of college. I was in engineering and I failed out because not that I couldn't do it, that I just wasn't focused. And also, like,
you and James Caan, man.
Yeah.
You guys are both like, yeah, he flunked out of college. I kind of wish I would have flunked out of college now. You guys seem to be doing all right.
Well, you know, the smart ones drop out and start tech companies. The, like, semi-successful ones just flunk out. Is
that how that works?
Yeah. But, I mean, I think it wasn't a good feeling at the time, but like I can't say I would change that because I went from engineering to business and just a different approach, but yet it's still something within my strong suit. Like I like numbers. My background's in finance. I appropriately am a geek for spreadsheets, and everyone knows it. I think anything can be modeled with numbers. But had I done that,
maybe I don't want to hang out with you. Never mind everything.
I'm a geek at heart. I like weird things. I have a comic book collection.
Yeah, I know. Ashton was asking. We got to hit him up on the way out.
But yeah, so it's just I look at everything good, bad, or indifferent in my life has been an opportunity to learn. And I value that more than the outcome because outcomes come and go. Yep. But what you learn and the tools you have now are more valuable than an outcome because the outcome it is literally a blip of dopamine in the moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, I used to have a manager prior that said she tried to live her life with no regrets. And I was like,
how does that work?
And in my mind, it's like, how do you do that? And I think that's what you're kind of speaking to is like, you don't look as them as regrets, but just opportunities, chances to learn or, take something from that spot and learn from it and learn how to apply it going forward.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just kind of like, if I told you, it's like, hey, I'm going to give you a Ferrari, but it's going to fall apart in a year. Or I'm going to give you all the knowledge to build your own supercar, and you can have that for the rest of your life and build as many as you want. What do you choose? Most people will choose the Ferrari.
Take the year.
They'll take the year. Mm-hmm. But the truth is in that year's time, you know what that person who had the tools has done? They've built one, and they're going to build another one, and they're going to enjoy it. And maybe they sell it to that person who's
going to say. The recipient is right.
It is, and I think that's most of life. Most of life is a mentality. It is just what side of that do you choose to be on? Like, are you the person that is always, and I don't want to say victim, but like, is something always happening to you? Or are you choosing that I'm going to go find things and make them happen?
Yeah, I like that. I think if we could switch gears for a second, and again, this is not me fishing. This is me asking a simple question. So we had you as part of you were one of the kickoff people of the whole Pioneer thing. Mm-hmm. Because you were one of the recipients of the award last year, and you were at the award ceremony, and it's been a year in, you've seen where this has gone and stuff. Did it have any impact on you? Did you, because I don't know how often you get to self-reflect, but just talking with you, you seem a little bit of just as intelligent and everything else, but you seem a little bit different from me sitting you down a little over a year ago for that video. So, what are your thoughts on the platform? What are your thoughts on Northeast Indiana? Do you see where we were going with all that? Was it confusing at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more than anything, it is foreign because historically, as a region, like, we didn't celebrate a lot.
And we see that on every show that we've done.
It's just that. It is that foreign feeling of celebrating. So forget whatever the words may be. Like, people like knew, but we didn't as a large group, as a community. Like, we didn't celebrate large and small.
No.
Like, we celebrated kind of in pockets, but I think now you're seeing more of this collective idea of celebration or celebrating people for what they've done.
Yeah, because I remember I had to have a couple of phone calls with you to try to drag you in to do the video, and it's I've learned terminology like Hoosier humility and things like that, and I think coming from where I came from, I thought I'd turn the camera on and people would get on there and just start talking and telling their story. I didn't see that apprehension. And it took me a while to realize that there's a collective here, but the collective humility, I felt like it was stinging us because to get to that next level, look outside the windows of our office. You see cranes, you see things being built.
Yeah, and I mean, I think historically as a community, like, we've always been not late to the party, but like oddly self-denigrating in a humble way.
Yeah. Why is that?
I think it's just who we are. I mean, like you get this. That's just a Midwest thing. It's like you kind of don't want people to know what you have, and like the people who know, and it just is what it is. It's a little bit of like, hey, like say hi to everyone, but then at the same time, I don't know. All those things, and I get it, and it kind of goes back to my statement, and I think you see it a lot in this community. There's not a ton of people out there seeking massive rewards for the true work that they do.
No. You're absolutely right. They're not looking for that. They don't want the accolades, whatever. But we still have your speech on tape when you got up there, and I think you're very good at saying profound things that lead people in their own direction through your words. Mm-hmm. That's what I've seen. And I think it's incredible just because, you've had this adversity. We talked at the beginning of today's show about, you're losing your parents and it made you work harder. And then, wait, I should be doing this for other people and giving them a path. And then, wait, maybe I should be, leading by example by listening, which is counterproductive, you would think. You would think that's a weird way of thinking about it, but you were able to pull it off. I mean, that's astounding. Like, I don't know. Everybody that had mentioned you to me prior to us meeting, I was like, who is this guy? Like, your parents, not only, and your grandmother, they did something very right, because it's easy to obtain advice. It's not easy to hear, listen, and understand that advice that's given to you. And you were able to do that, I think.
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope to pass it on to my daughters. And when you take that step back, I mean, and I'm sure I am but one of many people in this community, in this country, in this world that share a similar story. But I think it's just, you take that time to have humility, understand where your strengths are and how to apply them. And you can just do so much.
And you have. So I think the last question that I have before we get into the rapid fire is next horizons. Mm-hmm. So serial entrepreneur, spelled with an S. Not that I thought you were out making cornflakes, or maybe that's not next on the horizon. But as you're going through this, we've got. Thank you. You brought us in some of your beer, which is wonderful, and I'm almost done. But when you're thinking about, okay, so you've got Phil's Hobby Shop, success. You've got Hop River Brewing, success. Able to pivot out of COVID. You've got a great staff. But when you're thinking about it, is there something planned that you can talk about that's next for you? Whether it's an intangible or a tangible.
For sure. I think right now my focus is not necessarily on anything new, but evolving what's already there. I've come from both sides of it, from working in a business to buying it and then starting a business from scratch and working in that. And then what I realize, real simple math, is just running a business is challenging. Mm-hmm. Like you have to evolve. You have to be self-fulfilling on a lot of, just so many things you need to be prepared for. So now my focus more on is like, how do I evolve those core pieces that we already have, whether it be adding to or new opportunities in that. It's funny, and like I think in analogies all the time. When I was using the restroom today before I came in, I was thinking about like we think about the most beautiful flower in the world, right? Whatever that may be for you. Let's choose the most beautiful flower. I tend to like hydrangeas or lilies, but they lose their leaves. And that beauty that was there goes, and it comes back. So I think ultimately life is a season, and even at its most beautiful point, it's still going to go away and then come back. So in that, I just see that process of life and evolution that kind of goes in waves. And I think you have to ride that and have the strength to be prepared for that and live in those moments. And so just for me, it's just understanding those moments and riding them out. Sometimes when you need to kind of pedal hard, you pedal hard, and sometimes you coast.
Very well said. Very well said.
All right, so we have rapid fire questions. Be either or. Don't say both. That's against the rules around here. But just things around Northeast Indiana that you'd be familiar with and you can choose. All right. Well, first we'll start off with Comets or tin caps.
Dude, welcome to Not So Rapid Fire.
Fort Wayne FC all day.
I like it because you guys host parties there all the time.
I'm a soccer guy through my life. I mean, both those organizations, Comets and Tin Caps, are great, and I have relationships on different sides of both. But Fort Wayne FC.
Nice. I like it. You're sticking to your own team here. DeBrand's chocolate or Coney Island hot dogs?
Oh man.
Sweet. I feel another fight.
Sweet or savory?
I mean, house divided.
No.
I didn't say both.
Yeah,
I just said so. I'm a Coney guy.
There you go.
I'm a Coney guy. But man, can DeBrand's make my wife happy.
Yeah.
Three Rivers Festival or the Johnny Appleseed Festival?
I'm probably more Three Rivers.
Okay.
All right. If you had someone visiting from out of town, where would you take them to eat?
Oh man, you're killing me, Smalls.
Besides Hop River Brewery.
Yeah, there's so many places.
I like how thoughtful he is.
I know because I have so many friends in the industry.
I was gonna say,
now, like,
that's
how do
what
I,
everybody
like,
around
how
here
I
says. Come on.
maneuver? Like,
Yeah.
right now, honestly, I would probably say like Night Train, just because I am curious and I haven't been there yet.
Okay.
Oh, is that on the landing?
Yeah, with the new Dana's and the Blue Bottle.
Well, call me because I live right by that. So.
Well, and also too, I appreciate that they have adult hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, not too many places here.
Only there because I have not been yet.
Yeah.
But there are so many other places I would go that I have been.
Okay.
Since you own a brewery, what's your favorite type of beer?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Like I am.
And if you didn't bring in your favorite type of beer, then you're gonna have to bring that one in too.
Today we were drinking a New Zealand Pilsner called Summer Down Under, light, crisp, brewed with New Zealand hops. Favorite beer? I am a lager fan. Actually, Pilsners are a lager.
Mm-hmm.
So broad type, probably lager. But the truth is like from a palate standpoint, I love flavors, so I can run the gamut. If you want to taste something and pick it apart, the flavors and the experience, like I'm your guy. I like beer, and I'm also a bourbon connoisseur.
All right.
So like every other 40-year-old male.
Yeah. you had me and Brice at booze.
Yeah.
All right.
If you had to make an NEI bucket list or best experience that you've had in the region, what would you pick? What would you put on the list?
What would I put on the list? I would say definitely a show at the Embassy. Tin Caps games are fun for family activities.
Yep.
Of course, Hop River. Trying to think. Honestly, I don't know, random like boat show at the Coliseum or a monster truck show at the Coliseum would be fun.
Yeah. Well, so we're winding down now. So is there anything, we've got viewership, and we're going to continue to viewership both inside and outside of the region. Yours specifically, you're such an inspiration with the leadership stuff and everything. And I don't care if you're going to be humble about it or not. I'll brag on your behalf. It's been great. Everybody loves to watch your videos, and everybody can take your advice. Is there anything that you want to promote or tell people to come down and see or try this, which is delicious?
No. I mean, there are a lot of people and businesses, like obviously with the brewery, come and see us. We do craft beer, but the truth is like any local business you visit is empowering because it means dollars in this community that is spurning talent that may move through my business, their business, or any other business. So really, even just the brewing culture or the hobbies or things like that, like it is not isolated. So just support small business. Perfect.
I love it. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Make sure you subscribe and share and do all the stuff that everybody else is going to ask you to do. You can view Paris McFarthing with us on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, or please go to pioneerstartshere.com where you can see pictures of the next event that we've got coming up May 16th. We hope you're going to be there again. You can come bring the family.
Yeah.
Let us treat you to some beer. And I can't thank you enough. You are an inspiration and you're just an all-around great guy. Thank you.
Thank you.